So if you're struggling to make content, let's say you're running an online business right now, you're told you have to make content, or maybe you've been making content for years, but you're just in a situation where you're not feeling good about what you're making, which is something that has happened to me before on a few occasions. And what I've found is that there's a few reasons why you might be struggling to make the kind of content you want to make, or honestly, just to make it in general. And it's either because, one, you're overthinking it. You're just like, every idea you have, immediately your brain's like, this is a bad idea. Who cares? Why would anyone be interested in watching this or reading this or whatever kind of content you're making? Maybe it's audio, written, video, whatever the case may be. But you're just overthinking every idea you have. And so therefore nothing's landing. It could also be because you are being overcritical, which is kind of related to overthinking, but you're just, again, with every idea sucks kind of energy that's in there. Or honestly, you might just be resenting the industry, resenting like social media, resenting marketing, resenting clients, resenting basically everything that you are working on, how many likes you get, all those things. Because again, that's something that's happened to me. So I'm going to give you some tips to get past some of these things, because I went from, like, I started my first social channel, which was a YouTube channel back in like when YouTube first started, basically in 2005. And it was this whole channel about my own transition. And I ended up deleting it because I got a job at Apple and I didn't want anyone to see it. That was before it was like cool and important, not cool, but you know what I mean? It was important to post on social in terms of building your own stuff, or like getting people to see what you do. Now, even people get jobs because of their social. But obviously, if you're over the age of 30, you definitely remember a time when having a social media account was like, you might not get a job because of it. So I deleted that account, but I found in my own career that like I go through periods where I'm super into making social content, and then I went through a whole period where I wasn't anymore. I was making videos like every day on Instagram at one point. I was super motivated when I was first building the business, and I was also, again, talking to people about their social content. And then, kind of around COVID, I was like, wasn't that into making stuff anymore, and I stopped making it. I was still consulting people on their content, but I wasn't making a lot of it myself. So after a lot of investment in my own psychology and business building, as well as my own practices, here's what I've come to some suggestions, or here's some suggestions that I've come to that will help you bridge over this plateau, because it is very important that you keep making content. If you're really not feeling it, take a break, of course, but it's really important that you not let those voices get to your head, that you don't let that overthinking hold you back, because truly you have stuff to share, and it is literally the best marketing channel. Like, I've worked in paid media for a long time with Facebook ads, but honestly, organic trumps everything. It makes your Facebook ads cheaper, it makes them better, and literally you may never have to run a single ad if you make organic content. So getting to a place where you feel good about it is very, very important, especially if you want to add that extra 5 figures, like 10,000 to 99,000, or even 6 figures, $100,000 and more. Content is truly going to help you, but it's only going to work if you are like what you're doing, and if it's coming from a place that is really authentic to you. And so focus outside, not inside. So what happens is, kind of as I was saying about the overthinking piece, is we forget that we're making it for other people. Like, when I say focus outside, I'm saying like focus on who you're making stuff for. Focus on what they can get and what you can give, ultimately. Because when we're really internal about what we're making and what we're doing, we end up in this place where we judge everything that we're saying. We think no one cares about any of the stuff that we are doing, and we overthink basically all of our ideas, right? So when you focus out and you think about like, all right, what could I give? Like, when I was making videos every day on Instagram, my main perspective was, what does the world need to hear today? And I'd like just tap into that energy as much as possible. I'd say, what does the world need to hear today? And I'd get an idea, and I'd then make a video about that, like just an uncut 1 minute video, because that was basically the longest you could put on Instagram at the time. And this was before stories existed on Instagram. So it's important that you get out of your own head and you get into the joy of who you're helping or what you're doing or your purpose behind it. That should allow enough ideas to flow in where you can then start making again from that place, instead of like, how do I get this right? Because when you're focused on how do I get this right, it's just not going to work. You need to think about, what does the world need to hear? What have I just, maybe you just had a conversation with someone, maybe you just helped the client, maybe you just saw a reel. Like if you're just, if you're the type of content creator that makes, let's say, entertainment or different kinds of things, maybe you just saw a reel that inspired you and you're like, I like this, I'm going to recreate it. Think from that perspective instead of trying to get it right. The second thing that's really helped me is commit to being perennial. I think that's how you pronounce it, perennial. Basically, it's the idea that it's not just about one piece of content. Like when I will coach someone, I'll sometimes tell them that, because they'll be like, which one should I make? Should I do this one or should I write that one? Should I make this video? Should I do that video? Should I make this podcast episode or that podcast episode? It's like all of them. Because when you think about it, your content is like chapters in a book or little moments inside the book of your expertise or the book of your, personal brand, right? All the different things that you're into, all the different things that you help people with or that you're passionate about. You don't have to worry about making the right thing at the right time. You have to worry more, or not worry, but focus more on being perennial, which is the idea that your whole creativity is like a canon of thoughts, ideas, passions that will all come together to be the book of your life. I mean, one example is an artist like a Picasso, or, any artist that we still talk about today is inherently perennial, right? It's the idea that they have a body of work. It's not like they're just like, which painting? Like Leonardo da Vinci wasn't like, should I paint the Mona Lisa or should I make this flying machine? It's like, no, you do both. You just show up every day and you do it. So don't worry about which to do. Think about like the longevity of it. Move the needle further away and think, how much stuff could I put out in 5 years? And then use that as the barometer of what you're doing, because it'll free up a little bit of that critical thinking. It'll free up a little bit of that sort of doubt. And really, you want to look at your brand as I said, perennial. It's like, this all comes together to shape who you are. It all comes together to shape the content of your business. It all comes together to tell the story from a variety of different angles. And that becomes the content. My third point is stop comparing. This is challenging because it is very hard to not compare ourselves to other people. It is like nearly impossible. They say it's like built into the psychology of who you are as a human being and who we are. You are going to compare yourself to other people. Now, the problem that we get into, and I've experienced this, is that often we up compare. We're in a constant up comparing state, which means we're only looking at people who we think are better than us. We're only looking at things that we feel like we're not doing, but we rarely are down comparing. Like, we're not saying, oh, compared to this person, I'm actually doing pretty decent. Like, I spent at least a solid year basically comparing myself to people who I thought were better writers than me, who were better storytellers, who made better videos, and it basically didn't feel very good. Like, it's good to compare on some level because it shows us where we want to go and it shows us what we're trying to achieve, and it can help guide us and help direct, action. We don't want to feel a certain way, so we take action towards a new way of being. But if you do it too much, you will basically paralyze yourself from writing anything, posting anything, doing anything. So stop comparing as much as possible. Get really deep into your own sense of self. Watch different people, different content. Like if there's people that you're comparing too much to, because I would get into that, just find some new people. Like my wife sends me people who all the time who are making incredible content that I've never heard of. And usually women, because she listens to a lot of women. I tend to listen to a lot of men, but I've started to listen to more women now because of her, which is awesome. But I'm reminded that, like, wow, there are so many people, which can feel intimidating, but it also is awesome because it means that it's not like this pie, that we're all trying to take. There's only so many pieces that we can take. It's like, no, everyone is on their own trajectory, their own journey. Everyone can do it. Everyone has a voice. Everyone has the ability to grow an audience and to, not that it's just about growing an audience, but maybe that's what you want, or to have 1,000 fans, or to, reach a 5 or 6 figure month in what you're doing. Everyone has that ability. There's enough people on the planet. There's enough information. And that's a belief that I've had to just cultivate over the years because the other beliefs were not serving me at all. So it's important with the comparing that we just don't let that stop us. We take inspiration and then we keep going, and we understand that we're going to get better, and you will push through this plateau when you can find that energy in yourself. That's like, ultimately it's you versus you, and that's it. And my last point is to unpack those limiting beliefs. Like, really look at what you're saying to yourself about your content, and ask yourself, like, what are the fears around it when you post something and people don't like it, or it doesn't get as much as you want. Like, what is that what beliefs is that bringing up? Because I'll tell you, like, I've worked with people who have grown to hundreds of thousands of followers, and they will find moments when their stuff doesn't do as good. Like, if you've got hundreds of thousands of followers and you're getting hundreds and hundreds of likes, if not thousands of likes, and then you post something and it doesn't get as many likes, it's hard not to get wrapped up in that story around not enough, right? And because our barometer of what's enough keeps changing, and our, like, our line of what we consider a success keeps changing. The amount of things in my life right now that I once just dreamed of that now just feel like normal life, and like don't feel like successes at all, is a lot. So it's very important that we unpack the beliefs that are associated with all this content stuff, how good you are, your worth, all of that stuff. And you just put it to the side, or you just identify it so that you can, push past it, right? Like, for a long time, I've had this belief for a long time, or at least for the last few years, that people, because when I was, I'll backtrack. When I first got into marketing, I actually was kind of spiritual, but I wasn't that spiritual. And then I found that there's a lot of people marketing that are more spiritual. I became more spiritual, found my own sense of God and all these things. And then as you meet more people in the space, I realized that the people I really compared myself to, a lot of them were like youth pastors and people who had a lot of that experience. And so even up until a couple years ago, I was telling myself this story that I would never be as successful as someone who was a youth pastor, because they just have all these experiences and abilities that I don't have, or I could never compare to. And the reason that they're successful is because they have this, leadership experience and this spirituality that I can't touch. But that's not true. That's just my own belief and perception about myself. And if you're feeling stuck in your content, it's quite possible that you're creating these limiting beliefs through the comparisons, or through stories that you're telling yourself about your value, and about what you're doing, and about the long-term impact of what you're doing. Like, I'm not here to, like, when I work with a client, like, I'm not here to convince you to post on social. One of the criteria that I have for my clients is that they are already posting on social. So I'm just here to help you tweak it and make it better. But ultimately, I've have found myself in situations with people where they're like, yes, I know I need to do it. It's a part of my marketing strategy. I'm going to be posting more, and they never do it. They post like one thing once a year, and then they never, ever, ever do it again. And it's because they're holding all of these beliefs around the long-term outcome of it, and around the impact. And it's like, if you say that it's important, and you say you want to do it, and then you don't do it, well, then there's a discongruency there, and there's a belief there that you somehow have to unpack. And sometimes you never know where things are going to go. Like, I was working with a client, and we wrote a post together, and not many people liked it, but it was about a book that he had read. He tagged the author. That author followed him, and now they're in a DM conversation. So it's like, even if it doesn't lead to a direct sale, the network that you will build, if you have that dream of having like a really solid network, whether it's a business network or a creative network, and you just have opportunities falling in your lap, the content will do that for you. So hopefully this helps get you unstuck in your content. And if you're feeling any of these ways and you want some extra help, feel free to apply to the Strategy Lab. There's a link below. Peace.